Amazing. Libby, thank you so much. I think there's a lot of really powerful insights in there. Certainly, music discovery, artist. So I think we're gonna touch on a lot of the different themes, Libby, that you walked us through. Super exciting. I think because this is a music panel, after all, we'll jump right into the questions. But to start us off, I've asked each panelist here to help kick us off by sharing what they're listening to right now. So I'll go first to break the ice. Admittedly, I've been listening to all things Doja Cat. My TikTok is showing here. I call it field research to make myself feel better. But so that's what I tell myself. So that's what I'm listening to. Libby, why don't we start with you, since you just walked us through this amazing presentation? What are you listening to right now?
Yeah, I've been just nonstop listening to a Spotify playlist called Afrobeats
Oh
2021.
yes.
And basically I love it because they refresh it every single day. So I never have to kind of search anywhere else. And it's just uplifting and it feels warm to my soul and spirit.
I love that. I love that. And then let's start with Jen. What are you listening to?
Yeah, I think during the pandemic, my preferences definitely tended more towards sort of more mellow type of music, or introspective or subdued. And I think there's some commonality there because everyone's trying to survive while working from home, or teaching their kids from home. But I've really been like listening more to like Alan Stone, or like Emmett Fenn, Glass Animals, Cautious Clay, anything kind of in that vein that is like somewhat upbeat, but like a little bit more not as wild or danceable, has definitely been my preference.
I love that. I love that. And Ronan, what about you? What are you listening to?
I have been very excited about sort of the resurgence of rock. Bands like Måneskin, Larkin Poe, Aaron Jones, Greta Van Fleet's been around for a while, but kind of hitting this new thing. So it's been exciting to see that come back a little bit more than it has been in the past.
Yes, my baby brother, he was listening to some old rock songs on TikTok, and he was like, "Have you heard this song? It's so cool." I was like, "Come on, man!"
There you go. It's discovery.
Right. The catalog. When we're going to touch catalog records in this conversation. And finally, last but not least, Mike, what are you listening to?
Yeah, look, I have to agree with Jen that during the pandemic, it was definitely like comfort music, right? And it was more the stuff that I had listened to growing up, and kind of some of the, classic rock. I was at See Here Now, a festival in New Jersey in Asbury Park, about a month ago now. And the buzz was all about Goose, the band. And they're this like jammy fish, rock band that just really, had the place buzzing. Everybody was talking about them. So that's probably the newest one that I've been into lately. And huge shout out to Alan Stone. I'm actually very close friends with Alan. So
Nice.
love that you shouted him out.
Awesome.
Very cool.
He's very hard to not like as a human.
Yes, that's true.
All right. Well, the good news is for everyone listening in that the panel has good taste in music. So that's a great start for a music panel. So we'll just jump right into the questions. Libby, you talked about social as a means of music discovery, and I think music discovery has certainly evolved. Mike, if you could start us off here, how are consumers discovering new content, and how do you feel music discovery has evolved, just to add on to what Libby already shared with us?
Yeah, look, I think it's no secret that it's changed quite a bit, even mostly lately, in the last decade or so. I'm going to tell a story that might be quite embarrassing, but I think it's good for an illustrative purpose. The way I discovered music was on the radio with a lot of the other folks here, right? And more so, I was lucky enough to be in New York during, the boom of hip hop. So Hot 97, I would be there. Monday night mixtape, DJ Clue came on. I was ready to press record and get all the new music, right? And that was my currency. And now I had these really cool songs that I was able to share. Those days are over, right? I don't think this generation really listens to radio, terrestrial, unless it's streaming, right? And in addition, you have social media, TikTok platforms, video games, Peloton, music festivals, right?
Peloton, and yes.
SoundCloud and everything in between, right? So for me, it's all about the access, right? This generation, very digitally focused, music at their fingertips, right? Latin music, so much more prominent now than it ever was. And so I think getting that variety has really allowed, generations to blur those lines a little bit, right? And listen to different music. And it all comes down to an expression of who they are, right? I think it's really important for these younger generations on the types of music they're listening to is really their self-expression to the world to say, this is me. And we know that that's so important with social media and all these other platforms. So yeah, look, it's changed tremendously. I think for the better. I, couldn't even imagine having access to that. Even when there was Napster, I was like freaking out that I'd be able to get music. Again, I'm so sorry to date myself. I have gray hair. But that said, yeah, things are so different now, and I think it's great to have all the access.
Yeah, I mean, and Ronan and Jen, feel free to jump in if you had anything to add here.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say that music is so ubiquitous with pop culture now. It's really tied to people's self-expression, how they see themselves, and I think you're seeing music as part of gaming. You're seeing it in ads. You're seeing musicians pop up as like the feature in a fashion spread. And like you mentioned, Peloton with signing with Beyonce. Like there is no place where music doesn't color and touch that. When you look at pop culture, and Gen Z is more, their consumption of pop culture is more than sort of any other generation. And I think they're seeing this and it becomes just, the expression of everything that they care about.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say one of the things that I think is fascinating about the channels that both Jen and Michael called out, with TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube kind of being the first at it, there's sort of this almost like secondary market of discovery where it isn't just the artists that are being discovered, it's people covering the artists and playing renditions of it. And so now you have people creating their own fan bases as musicians, as guitar players, as piano players and singers that never would have had that outlet before. They're promoting their favorite artist's music, so you're learning about that artist, but now you're also learning about this particular person playing it. And so it's sort of creating this base of musicians gaining a notoriety that never would have had before. In the past, to date myself, the only way to become a famous guitar player, you have to be like Slash and end up in a band to become famous with them and be the sideman in it. Now those guys are creating and girls are creating these markets for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think some really interesting points. Do you think that since the pandemic, the change in music habits have impacted how discovery is also happening? Do you feel that maybe there's a relationship there?
Yeah, from a Microsoft perspective, I think we're looking at the habitual places that people were typically listening to music, or at least adults driving in your car on the way to work, or at your desk, or going to a gym. A lot of those places, at least in 2020, were really removed, and it did impact the amount of music people were listening to. I think in 2021, people were listening to more music, but in different ways. We've seen a giant uptick in the amount of people who are playing Xbox on Xbox Live. So not only do you have connected work, you also have connected play. So a lot of the music that's featured in the games and a lot of those playlists, like people are discovering music through their passions, and gaming apparently has become an even more important passion as we're all locked down. But yeah, I think that just the different places that people are naturally seeing music have changed, and therefore the discovery.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned also, I think Mike and Jen and Ronan, certainly you mentioned Gen Z. Do you think that Generation Z has a unique relationship to music, just generationally as a whole? How do you see TikTok? I imagine, you mentioning TikTok, clearly Gen Z and TikTok have a very intimate relationship. But talk to us a little bit about that, whether it's TikTok helping to revitalize catalog records. Ronan, you mentioned a little bit earlier, you were super excited about the return of rock and roll. But, how can if we can just talk a little bit about the unique relationship that Gen Z has to music and the role that maybe TikTok plays, and how can brands tap into that?
Well, I mean, I'll say, and I think Jen mentioned it's just everywhere. It's ubiquitous right now. And because of the nature of things like TikTok and Snap and Instagram and Triller, to an extent, like people are able to actually literally soundtrack their lives in a way that you couldn't before. I mean, you're creating the soundtrack to the piece of content that you're playing, or you're adding music to everything that you're doing. And so, I think your role in that sense, it just becomes a bigger part of your everyday life, as opposed to just, it's a thing I'm enjoying in this moment. Now I'm building a piece of content with this music for other people to see. One of the things that maybe I'll date myself here. I find that the ease of discovery, the ease of engagement, it makes maybe the relationship with an artist, with the music, slightly more fleeting. In that when I personally had less access to music, and it was, my rack of CDs here that I would engage with and recatalog by color or genre or, alphabetize whatever that week had me doing. I felt more of a deeper relationship to the catalog that I had, to the artists that I knew and the music that I knew. Once I actually, started digging into, Spotify and the services before that, I would fall in love with music at a very deep level, and then 4 weeks later, completely forget about what it was and who they were, and then I have to go work to figure out like what that was again. And so I found my relations to be a bit more fleeting. That may just be me, but I feel like there's an ease of sort of moving between genres and moving between artists that you love and between music that you love that maybe that took a little longer in the past.
Yeah, I'll just add to that quickly. With TikTok, hip hop is everywhere, right? And like, I think this generation is like this, not my parents' music, right? They feel like it's rebellious, it's a little more them, and it's all about self-expression, right? And so I think I was saying to Camila earlier today, I think it's so funny how, it's not just enough to love a song, right? Like this generation needs to put a dance to it, right? And show their expression and their individuality and their style through this song that's sometimes older than they are, quite frankly, right? And so that's been really interesting for me to see how it's so individualized, and TikTok has really fueled that.
Yeah, Jen, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say also, I think to add on to all of that is like the context in which young people are kind of living today in terms of coming to age in music have always been kind of those things that come together, but then coming to age and music during a global pandemic while we're still processing all our emotions and dealing with kind of mental health issues, I think is also a reason why everyone's participating and absorbing the music in the way that they are, because it's giving them a certain amount of like release, and it's kind of the same way that emojis are able to you're able to globally understand them. It's the same way that you are able to globally understand music, even if you don't understand the language and context. So it's bringing a lot of kind of collective release into that discovery and that process.
Yeah, I love that you're mentioning the global angle, and Mike, I know you touched on Gen Z just as a generation being so much more globally connected. And I think one of the trends that we've seen certainly accelerated during the pandemic, in part with the support of TikTok and various other tech platforms that are keeping us all globally connected, is the globalization of music. So I wonder, Generation Z specifically being one of the most diverse generations to date. So their backgrounds themselves, they are very global by background and their cultural makeup by nature. And we're seeing that really bleeding into the evolution of genres of music and all sorts of aspects of the music industry, but specifically as it relates to brands. What does that mean for brands? How can brands take advantage of this reality of the globalization of music and the industry? I don't know if, Jen, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah. On our side, I think just the nature of being more virtually connected has made us more globally aware. I think for the first time, we really are collaborating with our counterparts, across the country that were, either our coworkers or other partners. And this year, for the first time, we had our intern event was a global event, and we had everybody tuning in at the same time. And booking talent for that was extremely harrowing, because I think we all know trying to appeal outside of the US and also have it resonate within the US is a really tricky, certainly some countries have a little bit more relevance with each other and their listening habits, but there are definitely places that music just doesn't translate in the same way. So that's sort of one thing. And I think my most frequent collaborator at work pointed out something that I think is really important. We are all trying to tap into more diverse talent and more globally relevant talent. But everything that we're picking are Latin American or Asian American. So like, we're not necessarily working with talent that are relevant in the specific market. we're trying to make it relevant to our market with sort of a sidestep into a global market. And I think that's something that I'm certainly mindful of, and now I can't unthink it when I'm trying to book anyone for anything. Like, does this actually make sense in this market? So I think that's probably the biggest insight for me is, making sure that even if it's on the top of the charts, is it really something that matters outside of the US?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. Maybe we can dive a little bit deeper into the process of choosing the right artist to partner with, because I do think that is, I don't want to say a point of tension, but definitely a challenge that sometimes brands find themselves hitting the crossroads of how do we know what artist to partner with? So how does a brand choose the right artist to partner with, and what are, if we could talk about what are some key factors to consider? Do you choose, the artist who's on the rise, the up and coming artist who you're seeing that this fan base is starting to grow, but they're not quite Justin Bieber, right? Or do you go straight to the Taylor Swift and to her Swifties and go big and put the budget against that? So I think that natural push and pull of brands having to decide, oh, who is the right artist? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think for us, it depends upon the brand, right? In terms of what we can get away with, I'll say that. So Xbox obviously has a lot more sort of cultural relevance, and they're very interested in working with hip hop or rap. I authored something with our legal team around what brand safety guidelines are, and transparently, 99% of the artists don't get through sort of that filter. So we've had to be really creative around how we work with the artist, but maybe don't use the music. So that's sort of one piece. Everybody wants to do something, no matter what the brand is. Everyone wants to choose what is their favorite and what they see reflected in culture, and sort of navigating that territory to making sure that we have multiple brands under one brand umbrella, and we all have to think like Microsoft. We all have to think like Microsoft, and that is the echelon of brand safety. When you think about 1 billion people connected to Windows, like what would all of those people feel comfortable, seeing in our, our ads or our content? So that's one thing. And then when you talk about, do you go with somebody who has a huge fan base, or do you go with somebody, more up and coming? I think we have about 5 different offers out right now, and they really scale. So like we're always trying to find who is the artist that has the biggest cachet or the best story to tell, that we can kind of lean in on the earned media side. But then in a lot of our more paid campaigns on the media side, we're looking for artists that we can, either help break, drive relevance to their audience through our campaign. So I would say we look at the full spectrum, and it's very hard to put my personal preferences aside and always think about like what would be the right thing for this campaign, because it's very, very rarely the one that I would pick because I want to listen to it.
Right. Right.
I think you said something really important there. You talked about, do you partner with emerging artists or someone who's a little more established? And I think that's really the elephant in the room, right? I think for brands, they're always nervous to get into an emerging artist that might not have the scale or the catalog yet, or the recognizability. But for me, and this is something we do all the time, and thanks for calling out a conservative brand. I work on MasterCard, so also very safe.
Yeah.
And so we have some of those same hurdles to go over. But I think ultimately, when you start with what the brand's goals are, that's when it's going to be authentic, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you put those first, you'll then figure out the right talent and or property that's going to bring that to life in the right way. I'll give a very quick example. MasterCard made a $500 million commitment to Black female-owned small businesses in the beginning of the pandemic. We quickly aligned to say, hey, Jennifer Hudson would be a great voice for this, right? We think she would really get excited about this, and it would align with her values as well. And it turns out we were right. We were also lucky enough that she was starring in some small film called Respect about Aretha Franklin's life, right? And so we were able to tap into that and do a concert of her performing those amazing classic songs. And now, fingers crossed, she's going to be, nominated for an Oscar, and we'll have an opportunity to engage there. And I think it's all keeping that message consistent, right? While she's an entertainer, she's also giving out grants to small business and surprising people with priceless surprises. So it really comes down to what the brand's objectives are, and they should come first, and that's when it feels authentic.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Even taking a step below the brand objective, like what is a campaign objective? There may be a case where part of the campaign is to tell the story of people that are striving and up and coming and working to build something. And in that scenario, it makes a lot of sense to find somebody who might be a mid-level artist or on their way up, but has a story to tell, and also has a lot of headroom. And you can create that headroom with that artist, but it isn't just hey, let us get in here and license your song and get some content. It might be more of a long-term, we're going to build this thing with you because our brand is about building, or this campaign is about building. So, again, it comes back to both of these, as I said, is just what is the goal?
Yeah, and if we are looking at up and coming, I've sort of developed a structure where I can determine who I think is going to break out. So it's less about just discovery, because if you discover somebody and they don't drive, you aren't driving people to them and they're not growing, it doesn't really help either of you. But like we hired Olivia Rodrigo for our intern event, and I booked Tate McRae for a Windows launch event. So like these are artists that if you look at their socials, if you look at the interaction, if you look at their TikTok, any of the different platforms, you get a really good sense of who's going to break out. And so that is sort of what I'm laser focused on.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, Jen, because I think that while artists can certainly help amplify a brand campaign or whatever the objective is for a brand,
yeah,
vice versa, I think there is space for a brand to help uplift an artist. So this is really a bi-directional relationship. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but if you have an example of a time where maybe if any of you here were working with an artist brand, if your brand helped uplift an artist, and just the other side of the token.
I'm trying to think specifically.
Look, that happened a lot in the pandemic, right? I mean, artists didn't have an outlet in certain respects, right? When their tours got canceled, it was really challenging for them to stay close to their fans, right? And I think we saw even some of the biggest artists start to be open to doing more and getting more involved in their social media and getting closer to fans. We did a virtual concert with Camila Cabello from her bedroom, right? So it gave her an outlet. She's a huge star, but she had new music and she had things she wanted to get out there. So as a brand, MasterCard was able to give her that platform and do a live stream. So we did a ton of that work in the pandemic.
The event I was just talking about with Tate McRae, we also, I booked Alan Stone as well. He is very much a Microsoft friend at this point. But, when we got the numbers back based on the number of people who tuned in to see the sort of 60 experience, it was leaps and bounds beyond what they could draw within a regular tour based on the size of venues they would be touring right now. So whether or not I can point to a specific thing that says like we helped this person sort of make it bigger, we're certainly helping to drive the eyeballs, I think, with all of our owned and operated channels. And I think I've heard enough anecdotal comments about how much musicians are struggling in this point, and how that some of them are at their breaking point with not making any money, can't pay their staff and crew, aren't touring. I think personally, that definitely makes me think really hard about who I'm picking. And we're giving them an opportunity on our platforms that are worth, millions of dollars if we're selling those different channels. So, finding the right fit that we really back, is definitely important, because hopefully we can give them a boost.
We early on, T-Mobile had a campaign where, all the work was meant to be just really turnkey and pull things through really fast. But we got on a really good rotation of being able to find artists that were, kind of lower to mid-level, but willing to go and do commercial deals. And we thought we would hear anecdotally, I would always be curious, just to hear how the artists are sort of capitalizing on that, and are they building their social bases. And, I would love to hear the stories, just like Jen was saying, even getting the stories of like, gosh, one of the families, his wife needed to have surgery, and this artist suddenly got the call from the T-Mobile agents to go do the deal, and it just helped out. So it gave a platform, but it was also really nice to hear the human side of it, where it just didn't feel like a commercial transaction, because these are artists, and artists want to be able to make a living doing it. And it may not have catapulted that artist brand to a whole new level, but it did help them to pay their bills, and it did help them to stay on the road, or to pay the people they have, helping them build a tour and their promotional staff. And so I do think that there's I think we've gotten well past the point where artists think they're selling out when they work with brands. I think that they're seeing the mutual benefits that come from both of those sides.
Yeah, and Ronan, I appreciate that you use the word transaction, because I do think that when it comes to the relationship between brand and artists, that partnership truly is to some capacity a transaction, and you want to make sure it's mutually beneficial. And obviously, artists have their list of must-haves, and brands likewise, and it's that push and pull. So, I wonder if you have any thoughts on artists really are. I would say being a bit more selective about what brands they're choosing to partner with now and why, especially recently with artists becoming, certainly with the pandemic, but also becoming artists we've seen become really vocal about their values, what they stand for, what they believe in, aligning themselves with brands that have values that are aligned with themselves and their personal brand. So would love to just dig a little bit into, what do you feel artists are looking for today when they're thinking about brand partnerships? Has this changed since the pandemic? And likewise, vice versa, what are brands looking to get out of an artist partnership? And what are the elements that make a partnership successful or valuable for a brand? I don't know, Mike, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, look, I hate to keep stressing it, but it really comes down to the goals, right? If it's something where, they want to sell tickets to put on a MasterCard, then a tour might be right? If it's more about partnering with an artist that has their similar values, that's a different direction. I know there was a statistic that Libby and team came up with about celebrity partnership versus artist partnership. And I think you see a lot more traction with the musicians and the artists, because there's this real emotional connection, right? And there's an outlet. You get to go see this person do what they do best, right? I think with other celebrities, you may see them in a film, and you really don't get to touch it and feel it as much. And I think that's what really drives people to have that association. And like Ronan said, gone are those days where like an athlete holds up a product and everybody runs and buys it, right? Like they're way too smart, right? And it's all about self-expression and what's in it for them almost. And so they want to align with artists that feel the same way they do. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
yeah, I mean, actually building on what you're saying, Michael, I think certainly there are things, like we've gotten feedback that because of Microsoft's commitment to being carbon neutral and a lot of the different initiatives and charities that we support, I think that definitely gives people confidence to want to partner with us. But on the flip side, we're in a really important category, right? So if tech is so competitive, and if you have talent that is on the rise, I think it's a really tough choice. And I think a lot more they're understanding that they want to have one, sort of a longer term big deal with one partner, because it's a lot harder to go from Microsoft to Apple to Samsung, whatever it is. I think that category in and of itself has a lot of tricky pieces to it. And we, more than ever, I've had to really parse out what part of technology are we saying there's exclusivity with, because like there is like, I mean, we have gaming, we have PCs, we have operating system, like just a ton of different categories under one umbrella. And I would say that people are getting very, very savvy as to what that means and how that might potentially hurt their future finances, I guess. If you make a small partnership for like a one-off thing, that is probably not the best long-term goal. But unfortunately, sometimes that's just the nature of the deal that we're bringing. But that part has gotten worse for me, I think, during the pandemic, especially because everybody is watching virtually, and that sort of signals the tech. But yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say back to the first part of your question. There's always just more discussion about beliefs and values in the zeitgeist and in the culture today. And pandemics, politics are all around that. I mean, certainly 2020 was a lightning rod for just a lot of cultural discussion and social discourse. I got the sense that artists and brands both felt more of a responsibility to have a point of view, and whether they're being outwardly speaking up about that, or they're having a point of view and sort of on the back end, making sure that comes through in their partnerships or in the work that they do. It has been part of discussions, and we've been working with different artists, at least on the commercial level. I've had artists want to review the work from a lens of creativity, of diversity and inclusion. And if they're not seeing it, and I'm not saying necessarily in my own work, but I'm hearing these stories as we've been working with different teams, if they're not seeing it at a level that they want to be comfortable with, they're walking away, and they're walking away from big dollars in some sense. And I think that's admirable. And I think it's people are recognizing the leverage that they have. The artists are recognizing leverage that they have, and if you know, a brand wants to play ball with them, they got to be ready to be a part of that. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, you know, it's a great point. I think, how often do you feel that the brand values come up in conversation when negotiating with an artist team? When you're figuring out, you know, the before you get to the finish line of, all right, we're going to do this, we're partnering. How much of a role do you feel that your brand values play in the success of being able to lock in a partnership?
I mean, I think it's definitely becoming more important on our side. There was a particular track that I was trying to license this summer for a very important partnership announcement, and the partner was very, very stuck on it being just this artist, and they passed when we went through sort of the regular channels. And I really, I was definitely feeling the pressure and was really thinking like, okay, what's important to this artist? How can we tap into that in addition to what we're bringing? And we were able to align on a charitable endeavor that we're both interested in, and we were able to make a donation that helped his causes and kind of help move forward what he felt was important. And like amazingly, that unlocked the ability to license a song that he does not license. So I think all of us are more savvy in terms of like, hey, it's less of a transaction. How can we have a meaningful partnership between our companies? And what's important to you is important to us. And, you know, not just giving you a check, like gone are the days, and I never have done this, thankfully, but like, you know, hey, we're paying you to do this. Like, I think that would be laughed right out of the room. Nobody cares. Like, there's plenty of big offers coming in, you know, especially I think we're all kind of circling around the same types of artists, but, you know, being a little bit more aware socially has definitely helped move some of our partnerships forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whether they're the outward values that you know, a company expresses in the platforms they stand for, whether it's the internal values of the company, I mean, it should be one of the probably first considerations as we're looking at sort of the list of artists to go work with. And on the other side of that, like, you can never underestimate the depth with which people will connect to an artist and what that artist stands for. And ultimately, that will be a pass-through experience to your brand. And so, I mean, you have to make sure that the artist stands for what you believe in, and vice versa. And even more importantly, that you know, we as a company stand for what those artists believe in.
Yeah, look, I'll add to that as well. Something that Jen said, you know, it really is a partnership, right? And we do have contracts in places for reasons, but it's about going well beyond that contract. For me, sometimes the contract is table stakes, right? These are the things that we're expecting, but because you have that relationship, it's a living, breathing thing, right? These artists want the renewal, I'll tell you that, right? So when you're getting towards the end of the deal, you might be able to have a little more leverage, right? I was working with Mark Ronson, and he got invited to play the Super Bowl halftime show with Bruno Mars. And I was just with him and said, hey, we produced these awesome gold headphones. Would you mind wearing them during your performance? And he was like, yeah, no problem, right? And so his pictures went everywhere. He wasn't contractually supposed to wear them, but because of the relationship, he did, right? And it was great. So yeah, I think those are just the core pieces. It's up to us to really lean in and build that relationship. And a lot of times that's leaning in on the things that they love to do and help support the initiatives that are important to them.
I think it's a great call out of you know, having a personal relationship with them rather than it's a lawyer talking to a lawyer or to a manager, and asking them what they want to do. I think in many cases, people just forget to ask, like, what does the artist want to do? Because here's what the company wants to do, so that's what we're going to do. And I think that you know, these are creative people, and they just want to get their work out there in a great way. And 99.9% of the experiences, it's in a great experiential way too, for both the company and for the fans and for themselves.
Yeah, Ronan, you mentioned artists wanting to just get their creative work out there, right? And I think a way that artists are doing that more and more now is how they're leveraging technology. You know, you really using technology, and Jen, you touched on this as well a little bit earlier, that artists are really leveraging technology in creative ways to get their art out. And similarly, I would say that technology is creating a marketplace for brands also to connect with artists and for artists to connect with.
Uh-oh.
Moment of freezing. As she's talking about technology fails.
Perfect timing.
I think there's something inspired there.
Way to pick it up, Jen. I love it. While we wait for her, I found something very cool. Hold on. Is that the pick?
There you go.
Is that it?
That's it. That's it. Those are the gold-plated headphones.
Congratulations, that is a good look for sure.
I'm a Ronson guy because he's also a Duran Duran head. He
Yes.
helped the Paper Gods album come out, and that was amazing.
Yeah, he's like an encyclopedia of music. I got to spend a week with him in London, and he's just an incredible person. I mean, the knowledge to see what he's done with all of these other artists, right? And given, you know, even someone like Lady Gaga a new life with great new music. So,
You know what he is?
pretty incredible.
He's the current. Well, he's like Nile Rodgers, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And
he
his
like
fingerprints are over so much music that you wouldn't even think about.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
going back to technology. I'll jump in because I'm so curious. I'm a content guy. Here she comes. I'm holding the fort down for you. I almost went into my question and I got pushed out, so I'm going to take
Oh
off.
my gosh. It's the irony of me asking a question about technology and then my technology crashed, right?
Jen nailed it. She jumped in on that exact point. That's why she's so
right,
good.
gotcha,
That's
right.
why she's so good at her job.
At least we're
Awesome.
on brand.
Exactly.
But thanks for holding down the fort. But in any case, this is going back to my question, Jen, just the relationship between artists and how they're leveraging technology and how can brands tap in and work on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my estimation, like the biggest way that talent has leveraged technology is in finding any platform to continue bringing music to their fan base, right? I mean, it's been almost 2 really long years, and that is an incredible amount of time when you think about that's the time between someone's albums or the time between, you know, high school and college graduation. Like there's a big space of time, and I think it really helped keep things together in the beginning, but you know, I'm sure I am not alone in this, in feeling a really large amount of fatigue in watching a virtual show, because even if it's live, it still feels canned. Like you're not there, you don't feel the energy. Like they can't have a conversation with the audience or talk about the specific market. So I think technology has definitely helped, but I think we're going to have to evolve in a big way. I think it will be a hybrid moving forward in terms of you know, live and virtual. But I think we're gonna have to continue to find new ways to bring that content. It gives them much more global reach. Anybody can tune in at any time, and it's personally great for me. I love to see somebody's live show before I book them, so I kind of know what I'm getting into. And I think you'll still see that as a tool, but I can't imagine that it would move forward once everything is open again, where people are really just leaning in on virtual. You know, I think maybe VR has a big place to play there, and I know we're investigating a lot of things. Even the in-game shows, I think. Super amazing, way ahead of their time with what Fortnite was doing. I saw Roblox just announced today that they're going to host EDC virtually on their platform. You know, so many incredible ways that people are evolving past that already, and I think we're going to continue to see a ton of that movement.
One other quick example I'll throw in there is Versus, right? That was at a very big moment where they were able to capture this great idea virtually, right? And having folks in studios, sometimes in different parts of the country, and getting this battle, right? And I think it did a lot for the genre of hip hop, right? And to see them evolve it has been great, right? They're continuing these versus battles, but now they're on stage, right? And they're selling tickets and they're getting people to fill Barclays and the Garden. So yeah, it's been really interesting to see how they leverage technology. And then now it's a mix, right? And it's no different than what the work we've done. I agree that I don't want to do any more virtual concerts. I would much rather be in person. But look, it gave us some great experience. It showed us that we could provide scale, right, for the folks that can't be there in the room. But yeah, I don't think it's going to go
ticket
anywhere.
selling too is a big gatekeeping there. Like I think a lot of people were tuning in, but I don't think a lot of people were paying to tune into something virtual. And I think that ultimately will be the death of the virtual show as we know it today. If they can monetize it, you know, and continue to find ways forward there, that will probably be the key to how we'll see those virtual shows.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think the virtual is going anywhere, but to your point, Jen, like the AR and VR stuff that might come into it could get really interesting. I'm very curious to see how this new TV show that is coming out that has like the AR and VR experiences of artists like playing in different environments lands. And you know, ultimately, I hope to see the day when I can have Justin Bieber like dancing in my living room with my headset on or something like that. So, yeah, I think it'd be cool. But closer to home, at least in my world, I'm excited to see what artists start to do with 5G. I mean, we're still at that forefront of people just scratching the surface of what it even means. But just like with 4G, suddenly there was things like Uber and Uber Eats. Like, there's going to be some part where this takes off. And just thinking from a musician's perspective, the ability to like have a live performance with somebody in Seattle and one in New York and one in London and all play in real time and be in perfect sync. We're not there yet, but we will be there, and that's going to get really interesting. Not just for artists, but also for fans. I mean, I look forward to the day when the Foo Fighters say like, "Hey, we're gonna have a show, but we got this fan over in Italy who's going to join us for a guitar solo in this one thing." Like, that's going to be a lot of fun. So, I'm sure that stuff will be there in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know the work that we're doing kind of around the future of experiences, we kind of see that, the way in which the metaverse may or may not play out in the next 10 years, it's driving a lot more anticipation and legacy of these experiences. So imagine you're going to a concert and then you experience it physically, but then you can go into a Roblox world and do it and experience that again and like live within that moment. I think there's going to be a lot of richness about what that experience looks like throughout the journey. So that's kind of exciting.
Well, the other thing too that we're starting to see, I mean, agree on everything said about the virtual shows, but now those are being packaged up and also put live as global virtual shows. Like Coldplay is doing the official opening of our new arena here in Seattle on Friday night, and my wife forced me to go get the best tickets I could find. And then I read the other day that it's live streaming globally at the exact same time on Amazon. I'm like, well, we could have just stayed home and not have to get a babysitter and seen the whole thing, But it's creating a second life for these things. So if your brand is attached to it up front, now you might be attached to it as it goes, worldwide and Amazon or Netflix or whatever streaming service is going to have it. But I'm sure that will become a bigger part of the model as we go forward.
Well, let me know how the concert is, because I actually just bought Coldplay tickets this morning to see them in LA in April 26th. So keep me posted.
Keep me posted.
But Libby, you mentioned just like the future of this hybrid setup. Do you think that there is a generational difference between an appetite for this kind of virtual format? Do you feel that maybe Gen Z may be more open to it compared to millennials, for example, or boomers? Just if we could talk a little bit about the generational gaps between an appetite for that virtual.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you scroll out and look at the overall context of, again, people kind of under 30, young millennials and Gen Zers, they have done primarily most of their social engagements, interactions in these kind of metaverses, right? Like in the Instagrams and the TikToks and the Twitch worlds, but we're just kind of accelerating there. And to Ronan's point, like we're at 4G, but we'll be in 5G. And so I think that means that there are going to be these highs when you go out and experience these kind of physical moments, these in-person moments that are really, really important. But the way in which we continue to engage with those moments, engage with those artists, whether there's more artists going on OnlyFans, et cetera, like those channels are going to continue to evolve. So we not only get closer to the artist, but then we continue to kind of evolve and live in that experience. And I think that's definitely a younger generation thing. And it's just because they're inherently more comfortable with, being on Twitch, with being on Roblox, et cetera. Like just as an example, 3 and 4, 9 to 12-year-olds are on Roblox, so they're building worlds every day and living in these worlds. And so that's just going to create a massive wave of expectations and change probably.
And so do you feel that this is here to stay? Like this is the future, this hybrid format, this is the future of music?
I mean, I don't think we've figured it out, to be fair. Like, I think it's definitely an evolving thing, but I do think this future of kind of shifting between worlds doesn't feel different to younger Americans. It feels very natural. So I think they're going to tell us and show us what those experiences look like and what excites them about those experiences. And we should use them as kind of indicators of that change.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It's an interesting point that you mentioned that the younger generation born into technology, living in these virtual worlds, that it feels so second nature that it doesn't feel like it's something new or different per se. You know, and as speaking of the future, I know we have 10 minutes left here, and I want to make sure that we have time for some Q&A. I know there's been a couple questions here shared as well. Are there any other trends here, just for everyone on the panel, any other trends that you see for coming up in 2022 and beyond? What does the future of music look like? What do brands really need to keep top of mind as we look towards the end of Q4, the beginning of 2022? I can't believe I'm even saying that out loud. In my head, it's been 2020 in my head for many, and I feel like I'm dividing the pandemic based on what I was watching at the time. Like, oh, that was the Tiger King part of the pandemic. This was the Last Dance part of the pandemic, and that was the part when I watched all of Game of Thrones. So that's how it's been 2020 for like 2 years in my head. But it's so crazy to think that it's 2022. So are there any other trends, whether that's, as live stream, the role that live stream plays in the music ecosystem, the return of live, the increasing intersection of the gaming and music industries, etc. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but from my perspective, the things that I'm thinking about, I think NFTs are going to continue to evolve and play a much bigger part in terms of potentially having that be a souvenir or a ticket or something. I think there's a ton of things that we haven't explored in that realm. Obviously, AR and VR, I think we are making quite a few big bets in the background, infiltrating that into different technology and platforms. And if I think about music specifically, I think it's going to be fewer of the short disposable songs that were just released, as, not even part of an EP, just kind of songs that were being released that were sort of, everyone loved it for a minute and then it was on to the next one. I think we're already sort of seeing that there's a record number of artists that hit #1 with their records in I think it was in 2020. But people are looking at the body of work and they're thinking about that as like we used to love, us old people on this call. When you bought a CD or an album, like you read all the liner notes and like you fell in love with the entire story they were telling. I think we're going to get deeper into the storytelling and finding fewer, bigger artists that we want to attach to and that we want to discover.
I think we lost Camila. Whenever you talk, she like disappears.
I'm like kryptonite to her.
But I love what you're saying. To take on that point, technology for us, when I was growing up, at least, I feel like TV and music had like a Freaky Friday where old school TV was like the episode was that night and it ended that night. There was never an episodic because you couldn't DVR or catch up. If you missed one episode, you'd forget about the A-team for the rest of the season. The music was the album, the A-side, the B-side, the narrative. Like the artist told their story, and then tech just unpacked music into singles, and then they became episodic, immersive content for television.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting stuff. And now whenever I talk, you come back. So it's like,
I know. I keep
run the show. All right.
I keep trying to steal your thunder. I'm so sorry.
I don't want thunder. It's your show. This is all about you guys.
No, carry on, Jen. I know you were speaking.
I think I ground my point in.
She dropped the mic, literally.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I did try to get a mic drop in there. No, just that I think there'll be fewer disposable singles, and it'll be much more about learning about artists like the new Adele album. I'm certainly going to jump in and have my sad moment with that whole thing. But like the storytelling, I think is going to be more important and less about the disposable singles.
I love that. I mean, you can see that too with like the not yet fully mainstream, but especially approaching that with the resurgence of vinyl and people just wanting to have a little bit more of a tactile experience, maybe with it.
A physical connection, yeah.
The information, right? Like you said, I mean, there was no more exciting moment than like tearing off the wrapper on a CD or a tape or a vinyl and like reading the thing and looking at the pictures and you don't quite.
That was the only way we could learn, though. There was no internet, so like you ingested all that information, and it was like the most important thing about your favorite artist. Like it was like reading like a letter to you, at least for me.
Maybe it's time to bring back the zines.
Yes.
Yes.
Those are coming back.
I also want to throw down the prediction of the rise of the guitar god in mainstream again. More people like Slash and CC DeVille out there.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room for that. And Jen, I love that you mentioned Adele. I find myself listening to Adele's song and I'm like, I'm manifesting.
I'm not even sad about anything, and like I'm in it. I'm like, I feel
Me
you.
either. I'm like totally
Like, you're going through the
channeling.
same thing.
Yeah, I'm totally channeling like a divorced woman. I'm like sitting
Yes.
on the ground, crying, my mascara rolling down my cheeks. And I'm like, I'm in a very happily committed relationship. Like, I don't know why I'm feeling so associated to this.
Yes, we're on the same page.
I
Totally.
mean, the excitement of her album coming out. I mean, there seems to be something, a little bit of a backlash of like all these things just kind of show up and they're there. Now there's a little bit more of like appointment viewing and appointment listening. You know, even looking at the way like Apple TV is bringing their programming out, they're doing it once every night on Friday, or once every Friday, once a week, and we're okay with it. We can go back and binge later, I guess, but you know, I kind of like not having the access to the next show. And so I found during the pandemic too, just sort of the idea of like appointment listening, like setting aside some time. You know, I'm going to go listen to some music right now. I got nothing else to do. I'll get back into that mindset. And so, you know, I could see maybe a little bit of a return towards that.
Yeah.
Jump in as the non-panelist to that point. The liner notes may be gone, but the documentaries have just jacked up.
Yes,
And
yes.
the Rick Rubin McCartney documentary was just like pure candy.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Also, props to your background.
Like that, I owe you
Hey.
one. I owe you one.
I appreciate your allegiance.
I'm just impressed with how quickly he's able to change them
I know.
out.
I know.
It's been 2 years, Michael. It's been 2 years on this machine.
Well, and you also had a costume change. You threw on a Grateful Dead shirt there, I think.
Well, I've been wardrobing changing the whole day. I've been here since 10 a.m. I'm just trying to stay go. I'm trying to stay moving here.
Nice.
That's
Well,
funny.
you know, there's your continued resurgence of nostalgia, and bringing it together with the new, with Mayer and the Dead.
That's right. Oh, even Trey from Fish joined a little bit for a minute.
There you go.
So they've been doing 50 plus years now, these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
long
crazy.
time. And I know we only have 2 minutes left here. I want to be mindful of time. I know there's a really packed schedule for the rest of the day, but just to wrap up our music panel here in the spirit of music. Now that I know we've talked about the return of live music that we're all so excited about, you know, Ronan, you're going to Coldplay on Friday. I'm going in April. So from touring to festivals, what is the concert where you would love to be sitting front row to wrap us up for the day? Ronan, if you want to start us off.
I'm really excited about the Strokes coming back.
Yes.
Yeah. And if given the opportunity, I'd love to go see Lil Dicky.
Oh,
Shake-
yes. That would
Shake-
be the show.
Such a great show.
We are deeply involved in a negotiation with him, so hopefully something fun will be coming out in the back end. I watched every second of the show, Dave, and I realized I am much more immature than my peers after watching that, because it speaks to my soul.
Uh,
But
maturity in that show that only us mature people could
yes, exactly. It's cheating a little. What's that?
No, right, exactly. That's what I tell myself too. Oh, I'm so mature that I can appreciate the art that is being displayed here.
And you know, I know who Rick Rubin is, so like clearly I'm connecting the bridge between early and old. But it's cheating a little bit, but I'm super sweaty this year to see Coachella. I've had lots of opportunities in the past, and for whatever reason have not gone. But this is the year I feel like that kicks off the scene and basic sonically what we're going to look at for 2022. So I want to see it all, and I want to see all the new music discovery and go to all the sets that I've never heard of. So that's what's on my brain.
I
Yeah,
love
look. Am I next, or did you want to go, Camila?
I guess you are. No, I was just gonna say, Jen, I remember the last time I went to Coachella pre-pandemic, obviously, I discovered a lot of new artists or DJs that I had never heard of before. And I think festivals certainly plays a role in music discovery.
sure.
So hopefully we'll see the resurgence of that with festivals coming back. But
Yep.
Mike, what's your go-to front row concert?
Well, funny enough, I've kind of already experienced and seen it. Pearl Jam on the beaches in New Jersey.
Wow.
That's kind of pretty amazing for me. Look, I think just to wrap this up, we know live music is back. Streaming numbers are at all-time highs. Social media is adding fuel to this fire, right? It's all happening. So for brands, what better time to jump in, right? And make an emotional and authentic connection to their audience really enhancing this experience and welcome them back in a big way. And look, this research and insight is so valuable. Let's put it to work, right? Like, let's take what we know here and now really apply it to our business. And if there are any brands that are listening or watching, we're here to help. So don't be strangers.
Awesome stuff, guys. I mean, you kicked off with a high bar. You said you were the cool panel, and it was.
Did we deliver?
It was fascinating. It was cool. It was fun. You were coming in and out.
Okay.
Pete,
I always deliver. I promised you it was going to be the cool panel.
Libby kicking off with the research. Amazing. So, listen,
And Libby, by the way, the most insightful questions I've ever received for any panel. I was reading them. I'm like, God, that's a great question. So kudos to you and to Libby for bringing all the research and all the fact finding so that we could just be jokers.
Yeah. And I'll say, my shameless plug is we've got the VMAs and the Grammys at ViacomCBS. So when you want to celebrate music, you know, those 2 nights a year in a way that runs across every platform and in real life, you know, give us a call because we are just as passionate as you guys are. And we go just as far back. So let us know.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so
All right,
much.
we're moving on to the
everyone.
next panel. I'm
All right.
keeping on moving. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys. Thank you. Oh, we have another. This is our last panel of the day. This is my last panel of a 10 a.m. run. So here we go. Let's see. Are they going to come in? Here we go. Shannon.
Hey, how are we going to top that amazingly cool panel? This is
Easily. You guys
out of control right now.
You guys are coming in hot. You guys are like, you got Facebook, you got Roku, you got Vice, you got MasterCard. I mean, what else? This is the vehicle for all that.
Closing
I don't know.
strong.
That last panel though,